Finally got together.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh my gosh.
For sure.
So Smethport, has that always been hometown for you?
No, my adult life. I came there in '66 for a teaching position. Been there since that date, and I was an elementary school teacher for 32 years, and then high school principal for the last 5 years before I retired.
As a high school principal, did you guys get much into the study of history and World War II? That becomes kind of a lost art.
It's a lost art. Very little was ever done in the history classes. Just touch on it. It was I guess a special event when I would bring my books in and share them with some of the students in different social studies, history classes and stuff like that.
So when you came in, how did you even start the conversation? Say, hi, I'm Principal Semmel, and I'd like to talk to you about, what would you say?
Well, basically, my materials were loaned to the teachers who requested it, that knew I had it. And teaching in the elementary school, there were some of the books that I would just reference to, and some of the pictures you could not show the elementary students, because of the nature of the material.
So, but the subject matter was World War II, was that?
Right, right.
And you take it from a personal perspective. My dad was?
Yes, I did, about being a guard, and then we talked about the different parts of the war trials and, what was happening and things like this, the destruction. I had pictures of many of the cities before and after and stuff like that, but did not show things on the concentration camp for, various reasons.
Your dad was from where?
He was from Lehighton, Pennsylvania. His parents passed away when he was 16, so he was raised by some of the relatives, and he was drafted and went into the service, and my brother's 4 years older, so he was born right after he went into the service, and I was born in '44. So
he went into the service pretty early on, 41?
Right. Yes, he did. Yep. He served 41 to 46.
Wow.
Yep.
Army?
He was in the Army. He was in the First Army, and we were not given any information about his career or the Army experience. I remember I was 17 years old, and my brother was at Penn State, and one evening at the dinner table, my dad started to talk about his experiences, and my mom made him stop. And it was just a dramatic thing. I'll never forget it. And the only time that I ever heard anything about his war experience and the materials and stuff I have was when I turned 21. And at that time, she allowed us, my brother and I, to hear about his experiences and things.
What was it that caused, as you learned later, what was it that would have caused your mother to say, Warren, stop?
She documented everything he did, all his letters that he had sent her. She would collect all the newspaper clippings, which I have in these booklets, from Post and Life, and where he was stationed. She'd get articles or all kind of information, so she knew firsthand, and the pictures and what was going on. And to her and, well, to my dad, like I said, he really thought maybe at 17, when I was a senior, that I could understand and share some of this. And she, you know, like I said, to this day, she just cut us off. And we had, then the scrapbooks came out, and then we could see the pictures and things like this. So it was something that she was very upset with, the fact that he was drafted and had to go serve, especially with 2 young boys at home, and she was raising my brother and I by herself. And I think this was just a hardship on her, and she just, he wasn't allowed to share at that time, you know. Before, he never volunteered anything, even when we were not together, you know. But like I said, it took forever for him to finally talk about some of his experience. And then I learned that when he came back, he went to the Rotary Club there in town and shared his books and scrapbooks that he had and things like this. And they had the articles about it. And then everything was, you know, hushed for a long time. Actually, from 46 to about 66, those years.
And not uncommon.
Right.
And in a kind of a Reader's Digest format, what was your dad's military career?
He was the cook in the First Army, and he, to the days that we had talked to him about being selected to serve as a guard, his regiment, they were selected, and to this day they weren't sure why. And that was one of the reasons I came up. I thought, you know, maybe somebody had information, you know, at the center here as to, you know, why those guards were selected. Is interesting. He was 5'10", which was, I was told by him, was the average height of all the German war criminal prisoners, and he could not be on active duty in the courtroom with wearing the white helmet and that because it wasn't over 6 foot. So when you talk about propaganda, you also had the American, you know, propaganda during the war crimes. So, and he was given a sash that they wore on their uniform, and that was the only recognition or that was presented to his outfit for serving in the courtroom. He did go twice. I have the passes, actual passes that he went in to be an observer, you know, during the war crimes and that. So it was interesting. And like I was mentioned before, he had told me about Hermann Goering, and wasn't interested in the court proceedings at all, and just read novels. And for most of the trial, and my dad said he never put the earphones on. He would not listen to the interpreters, and Goering, to my knowledge, you know, could not speak the other languages in the courtroom, but he refused to wear the headpiece for translation. And my dad had mentioned that the last 3 or 4 days, the summations and that, is when he finally put the headset on, that he would listen to what was being said. Otherwise than that, and he was the leader, of course, the forerunner, and everyone else, whenever something was mentioned or they asked someone to question on the prisoners or whatever, my dad always said that they would always look to Hermann Goering and see what facial gestures he was given at the time before they would even answer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, your dad's role at Nuremberg was he was a guard in the prison.
Right.
So, and did he talk much about the routine of that, how that worked?
Yeah, he has showed us pictures and had the scene at the windows and how they had to look in the cell every 20 minutes, and they stood right by the doors, and they weren't allowed to leave their post, and all the guards were armed with a pistol. They had a hand pistol, and the other thing I remembered about the prison part itself was they had all those mesh nets on the second and third floor, so that none of them could escape by doing suicide and jumping off at the railings and things like that. So
it's funny. You're probably the first guy to talk about that. You see it in the picture,
right?
But even the guards we've talked to have never mentioned that. So, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Why don't you pull that book, maybe the book that had the autographs on it, and pull that Warren, and then we're going to talk your way through that here, or maybe I could ask questions about it, because this is just fascinating stuff. When did your dad pull this out and say, "Hey, son, let me show you what I got"?
After I was 21.
Was that right?
Yeah, after I was 21, then my mom had the money, with the signatures on. My brother and I got our German mark signed by Hermann Goering. When I was 21, he would have been 25. And then we got a German silver dollar at that time for ourselves, which is things my dad had sent over for us. And we had quite a interesting collection. One thing I remember my dad talking about, and things that were put away for us. We had Nazi cars, Gestapo cars, and this is in 1946. And these cars were wind up, and they would not fall off the table. They had a third wheel, and you put them on a card table or whatever, and it drive around. And we had a metal Gestapo building, and there was a little telephone on the side of it, and it was spring-loaded. And this big German phone, it was oversized little phone on the side of this, and if you lift up on this phone and pull the string, the doors would fly open, and this Gestapo car would, fly out of it, and things like this. And the reason I mention this is because in 1955 was the first time that my dad could find any American toys that would resemble what the Germans were doing. And this was just in the field of toys, So how advanced they were in technology and everything else was amazing,
One of the things that, of course, Nuremberg itself is one of the toy markets of Europe.
Exactly.
You go there now to buy toys.
Yeah.
And stuff. And did your dad, if I'm looking at these actual, in some cases, copies of the autographed marks, did he talk how he got those? I mean, what was the procedure?
He was able to speak Pennsylvania Dutch, so he could communicate with most of the prisoners. And he spent a lot of time with Hermann Goering, from what I was told, and that's why he had Hermann Goering sign the $20 mark. And then once Hermann Goering signed, then the rest had no problem doing it. 3 of the prisoners refused to sign on any money. And then my father, talking with them, mention about his 2 boys at home, and that's why I got a mark with his signature, Herman Goering's signature, and my brother did also. So that was a little extra bonus that he had thrown in. But some of the prisoners, 3 of the prisoners, refused to sign on the German money because, as my dad told the story, they still believed that the Third Reich would return, come back to power, and that they did not want to deface any of their currency. So my dad had to, with a shortage of paper, tear off the triangular part of the letters that my Mom had sent to him and had him sign on those letters. And there's a little note in there that my dad sent to my mom that he apologized that they wouldn't sign on the money, but that he hoped this was good enough for him.
Well, you realize if you had signed, if the two guys here that you have, Schacht and von Papen, if the other defendants had signed this slip, it's a way to become acquitted. Those guys were two of the 3 that got acquitted.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure there's a direct connection, but you never know.
You never know.
They knew what was coming. It's probably.
Did he? Was there a quid pro quo? Did he hand him a candy bar? Did he?
No.
Cigarettes?
Just, I think what he basically being able to talk with them and communicating with most of the guards weren't able to do that. So, like I said, he could pick up a little bit with the German thing. The Pennsylvania Dutch background that he had too. One of the prisoners prior to the trials and that they were caught, and this prisoner was yelling out in German that he needed someone that could speak German. And apparently my dad answered him, and this prisoner came over to my dad and handed him his knapsack. And in a knapsack was his camera and a couple rolls of film and that, and he told my dad in German that when he got to the prisoners' camp, they were going to take this stuff away from him. So he said, you might as well have it. So I have one scrapbook that is basically shows the German side of the war. And all the pictures that are in that are pictures of the streets and things that were, places that were captured by Germany. So.
Interestingly enough, the photos that you saw in the theater done by Ray D'Addario.
Right.
He did a book which is very famous in Nuremberg. Of not only he did a book on the prisoners, but also a book on Nuremberg outside and the damage. And he came back to the identical spots 25 years later and took shots. And it's that book which is sold out all the time. But it's just kind of fun to see the kind of life and times.
My dad has one scrapbook there that my mom put together that, being in Nuremberg, my dad acquired several postcards of prior to the bombing, and then has pictures after the bombing. So he has before and after scenes in the notebooks. Yeah. It's in there.
When he talked,
sure.
When he talked about this, I mean, this was obviously towards the end of his military career,
right?
In Nuremberg. Life before then, as a cook, was he a cook the entire time?
Yes. Yeah.
And do you get a sense? Do you know his travails or where his various stops as he?
Yeah, the one notebook shows he was in Belgium, he was in France. The next notebook there has the years and all the places he was at. So, like I said, there's a whole history there. I also have in the one notebook which covers just the crimes. I do have his original orders that were printed for him. And that's why I was wondering. That's why I came up today to see what you have and what you don't have and what I can help you with.
Well, this is all very informative because we have interviewed some guards, and some of it's just plain serendipity where their units happened to be in Nuremberg when the trial started, and that's how they happened. Some were, we've interviewed Jackson's bodyguard, Moritz Fuchs, who lives, still living, Fulton, New York, who was selected out of a unit to be his only bodyguard. I mean, today, officials have bodyguards all over the place.
Absolutely.
He was one of one. Lived with him.
Oh,
I mean, talk about an amazing story, but you'd say, why you? If you see him, he's not a brute.
Huh.
He's, what, 5'8", maybe?
Yeah. Priest.
And now he's a priest. That's a great human interest story. But he wasn't then. He was just,
right, yeah.
He goes, I was a pretty good shooter, and I guess I caught my commanding officer's eye and was selected. Jackson
That's
didn't even
good.
want a guy.
Right.
But anyways, so everybody's had a kind of a story, but what was his story? Did he think, how did he get selected as a guard?
That's the mystery that remains as to his regiment. They had pulled them in and gave them their orders and told them to report to Nuremberg, and they were going to be the guards, and then they went through, and all the enlisted men or officers, whatever, that were over 6 foot, they went one way, and they became the actual guards inside the trial area, and those that weren't tall enough pulled guard duty at the jailhouse.
What's interesting is that no training. It's not as if they were had been guards at other prisons and then now were coming in to be to the big show. They were just
that they were stationed in that area.
And what regiment was he in?
The first, I think, it was on that plaque, I believe. It had a number 1 insignia, Army number 1.
Big Red 1.
Big Red 1.
Tony Costanzo was in the Big Red 1.
Yeah.
Pete.
Would he reflect back on it in any ways? Did he see that as a positive part of his life, or just something he was told to do, he did it, and glad to get home?
He was actually glad to get home. I know while he was stationed overseas that with the 2 young boys that my mom was raising, she wrote, from what I heard from my relatives and aunts and that, she wrote letters to the War Department, continuously to get him sent home. That his duty was over, the war was over. We need him back home. Get him back home. Is what they did.
Now, did he stay there to the end of the trial?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He was there till it was all concluded.
Did he have any comment about Goering committing suicide?
No. There were things, and that was one of them, that he wouldn't, relate to.
Because there was certainly speculation and, in fact, books written about the fact that one of the guards identified as Tex Wheelis.
The head of the guard, yes. I watched that history documentation, and that was very interesting. The other thing, when that documentary aired and ended, they had Hermann Goering signing a piece of paper for one of the guards, and he told them that, this isn't going to be valuable now, but in the future it's going to be very valuable, and I laugh at it. In the meantime, I've been on the Antiques Roadshow and things like this. I see there was twice now, people had vanilla folders with the signatures of the guards. And the process was they gave a guard a cigarette and the guard gave them their signature. And that's how they had done it. And a couple people had this collection of 21 signatures from the prisoners, and they bought those for a cigarette. You know, my dad got them, you know, just by communicating with them, and you know, and not doing the cigarette deal. He did it by just befriending some of them. Yeah.
Was he an autograph collector otherwise, or was this something to do?
Never. There's some.
So I guess some of the guys who've had some autographs will come in here and they say, you know, we had so much time on our hand.
Yes.
I mean, you're looking at this guy for an hour on, 3 off. I mean, it just kept, and you just rotate after a while. You got to.
Well, basically, some of the problem would have been communication, you know, between the guards and the prisoners themselves. Like, and my dad could carry a little bit of conversation with them, and so I think that's what opening, you know, the doors up that for him to get the signatures and things.
Because we have some of them, but not all, certainly not all of them. But the one that's elusive. And I don't know that you have it, but it's Hess. Rudolf Hess wouldn't sign. If you've got it, it's terrific.
I think Hess is in there. They're listed. There's two on the money things that I couldn't identify the names.
I mean, it's not like he did it. It turned out that when he wanted something, we have this. Exhibit we had a year ago on Nuremberg cell block notes, and there's a Hess note saying I need a blanket, Hess, and that was just a message to saying I need something. But as far as he was notorious when the guards would do what he was notorious at, nine. I guess he was just different. And they couldn't bribe him. They couldn't do anything. Yeah. They couldn't. Here's candy. Here's chocolate. They borrowed cigarettes or anything like that. So. It has, you know, in the collector business, that's always the one.
Another question I was going to, find out today is ashtrays from the courtroom. Did you ever see them?
Yeah, we have one.
Yeah, well, that's why I was wondering if you had any here.
Yeah, there is one from a guard.
Yep.
I don't know if it was. I can't say it was from the courtroom, but it was certainly from the courthouse.
Yeah, well, my dad's is from the courtroom.
Oh, no kidding.
Because, of course, at that time, they could smoke.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so, during the trials. And I've been looking at all the pictures to see if I could find any. But as my dad would relate to the ashtray, it was a German shellhead. Ah. And they put it into a press. And they made ashtrays out of them for the trial.
No kidding.
Yep.
Look at that. Never thought.
Propaganda. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly why they did it.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So your dad comes home. Mom's relieved. He came home about 46?
Yes.
Did your dad ever talk about the
I think
results?
it was a summer 46, something like that.
So he was early.
I think, yeah.
So did Dad ever comment on the verdicts, the judgments? Did he ever?
No.
I'm glad those.
No. The only thing related to the trial was that he was there, and he had some signatures, and my mom made the scrapbooks, and that's what we'll share with you, and that was it. That's all that was being shared, you know. As many people, and my dad had 3 brother-in-laws that all served in the Navy, and the 4 brother-in-laws and my dad, the 5 of them, all being in the military at the same time, never talked about any of their experiences. Never.
so
and
common.
we had many family get-togethers, and my grandparents were living at that time, and we've always got the families together, and that was a subject that was not talked about. None of them. And several of them, didn't have bad experiences per se, but they saw things.
Yeah.
And they did not want to, at any time, disclose any part of it or bring back memories. Yeah.
Gosh, that's, like I said, although we've done about 100 interviews with vets, and many of it's for the first time.
Yeah. They've been doing things down in our way that there was one gentleman that was a prisoner of war, and he's in his 87 now, I think, or what, 90s, he's in his 90s, but he, this was the first time this year that he ever mentioned anything. Even to his family, grandchildren, nothing. And this year, he's having trouble remembering things, but so he wanted to share a little bit.
If your dad were sitting here, what would you want to ask him?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't think living with him and the conversations we had that I would ever ask him about the war and his experiences. I can see some of it there, and my mom did an excellent job, piecing everything together for him for a diary, but that was the extent of it. Like I said, I respect him for what he did, and it was very interesting, to my brother and I, things he has saved for us and sent us, and the cars still work, the Gestapo still works, and everything he has sent to us, we still have, and it's still in operating condition. And usually at Christmas time, we put on their platform, and that's probably the Pennsylvania Dutch and the German background, with my family, is a platform underneath the Christmas tree, and the train, and the little village. And my dad has sent my mom the paper mache houses that had lights inside of them from Germany, and we put those on our tree every year.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, your dad died when?
1974.
And your mother?
Passed away in 1991.
Well, you're keeping on the tradition, and delighted that you share that. What's a question most people ask of you that I haven't?
I think you got many of them and stuff like that. Basically, can we look at the books?
Can we?
Yeah.
Look at the books,
Yeah. Can we look at the books? And they tell a story, that's for sure. So my brother has my dad's uniform.
Ah.
So
Can he fit into it?
My brother would be close, not I. Yeah, my dad was short, 5'10", so, and lots thinner in the 40s.
You can see some of the pictures here. We've actually had a couple who put on their uniforms, which is spectacular.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And the mere fact they could fit into it is more spectacular, because that's not necessarily the case. So what should I be asking him? Come on, Bonnie. Come on. What's He's been telling a story here. We're preserving history. We're preserving.
I think he did a pretty good job on the whole. He remembers a lot more than I do.
Well, it's a specific period of time, and I find the World War II memory aspect of it fascinating. And I know that everybody who comes in here, the youngest is 88.
Oh.
That's the youngest.
I remember his grandmother speaking often about having her 4 sons
Oh, I would think
and her
about it.
son-in-law all in the war at the same time. And she would get pretty emotional about that.
Yeah, he was stationed in Germany November 45 to April 46. So, and this is basically pictures of Nuremberg and all the Hitler's parade ground. I remember him talking about it. One story he did relate to us where they took all the German tanks and jeeps and everything left over from the war that was still, you know, working in that, and then auctioned them off to the people in Germany. Yeah, gave them back to them. But the whole parade ground was just as far as you could see, tanks and pictures of tanks and jeeps and, you know, airplanes and everything they had. So.
Now, was he a photographer? Did he? These are
No.
these his photos?
No. The photos are nice, yeah. The other thing is the,
Well, some of these photos are the ones that were in the camera that he was given.
yeah, the red notebook, the maroon notebook, that's from the German, the prisoners' camera. All those, and those are the real narrow pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing he talked to us about was the in Market Square, the wishing well that was out in front of the church there. They concreted the whole thing before the bombing in Germany, and then that preserved the well, and they did a lot of the historical things like that they wanted to save. They just poured a big cast of concrete right over top of it,
Okay.
figuring that after the bombing, if they needed to, they could, you know, chip away the concrete.
Never heard that. That's
Yep.
That's,
There's a picture of the marketplace and what it looked like, and then with the concrete.
that,
Wow.
while we're on, I went by, I was in Nuremberg for 6 months.
Oh.
I went by that Market Square every day. And I sent postcards home to that church to everybody in my family. It was fantastic,
Yep.
the front of it. And it was one of the few things
Beautiful.
standing, you know.
Cathedrals.
on Warren. But by the way, Warren, I have to ask you a question, 2 questions. Did your dad ever say anything about seeing Justice Jackson?
No.
Did he?
No. That's why when Greg, you know, said about the center being up here, oh, wow, I had no idea. So I was so glad that.
The other question I have is that your dad was at Camp Gordon, Camp Pickett, Nuremberg, Germany. I have to say that I was at Fort Gordon and Nuremberg, Germany. I don't know why I didn't see Camp Pickett, but
Oh, wow.
kind of strange, you know?
Yeah.
Really, that's really fantastic. But yeah, I was at Gordon and Nuremberg.
The Congress Hall, which they have the picture of the model, and which mentioned in here was stopped in 1940, they've now completed it, and it's now where they have a museum
Oh, okay.
on the Third Reich. It's huge. But that's in Nuremberg, and it's right next to the Zeppelin Field, which is the Nuremberg Parade Ground.
Right.
Congress Hall, is that what it's called?
Yeah. And that was Albert Speer had designed that. Then they redid it, and they actually have a strange way, kind of a spear, steel spear that sort of goes through the Congress Hall. In one sense, perhaps Albert Speer. In one sense,
Wow.
sort of pierce this.
Wow.
But they used this huge facility to basically talk about the Third Reich and may it never happen again.
All right.
Because they didn't know what to do with it. They couldn't blow it up
No.
because they blew up everything else. Oh, wow. Man, this is cool.
Yeah, it's better than that, it's fantastic.
I'm just so thrilled that you came here. There's the surplus. Wow. Have you been to Nuremberg?
No. Love to go.
Actually, some of this, you go now, I mean, it's just, it looks the same. They've preserved it. It was destroyed big time after the war.
Yeah, I could see some of the pictures down.
Yeah, but
down below.
that which was saved, they've saved, and that which is they put back was kind of an original form. Gosh, so you're a great teacher. He's very articulate, like you, Steve.
I checked, the Hess signature is not here.
Not there?
Nope.
Okay.
That would put it in a different range if you had it. That's sort of like if you collected
The
baseball
Holy
cards.
Grail.
Well, yeah,
Like
it is.
having Ty
Instead,
Cobb.
well, no, Honus Wagner.
Well, yeah, Wagner.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've collected baseball cards, great, and I got the 1912 baseball cards, great. Do you have the 1912 card?
Yeah.
And Hess, he just didn't do it.
Just an off-record story, I saw one at an auction one time. And Honus Wagner, okay. No, I'll take that back. It was at a show, sale. Okay, the guy wanted $1,500 for it. Now, to show you how naive and stupid I was, I said, they didn't make paper baseball cards back then. I said, I'll give you $50 for it, and he laughed. And then I found out it was an authentic card. Some guy paid the $1,500 for it.
Well, if it
It's
was,
worth more than that now.
well, they just auctioned one off. It was in pretty tough condition for $500,000.
Yeah, Fuji.
And the good stuff, Wayne Gretzky bought one for this is cardboard. See, I'm an autograph guy. I appreciate autographs. I mean, because they actually touched it. I mean, I like the fact that, you could touch that and say Hermann Goering touched it.
Right.
That to me that's magic.
Right.
There's a little electricity,
Yeah.
spooky perhaps, but I feel that. I enjoy that much more than a guy pays $3 million for a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
A wagon. Now, not everybody thinks that way, but
Wayne, this black book you got here, these pictures here, is really great. Not that all of them aren't, but it's fantastic to get to see some of these. I've got 42 books at home on the Nuremberg trials and on the Third Reich, and some of these pictures I've never seen before, so I find that pretty cool.
Wow.
They're the ones from the criminals.
Yeah, yeah.
His mother was
I mean,
responsible.
there's a great picture of Martin Bormann in here I've never seen before.
yeah.
You don't see a lot of pictures of Bormann, but
Of course, he didn't make it to the trial. So that's another autograph. If you're looking for Borman, ain't no chance he wasn't there.
I wonder if there's ever one around. Probably not.
Oh no! For example, you can go online. I could go online and buy a Hess autograph for a couple $100,
Yeah,
but it's not
yeah.
from the in a collection. I mean, he was an official. As an official, Hitler. I mean, Hitler's autograph is not rare.
Yeah.
Right.
It's maybe $1,000 on a document, which. So, and Hess, he signed a lot. But when it got to the trial,
Nothing.
he was a Looney Tune, anyways. But that's what makes it unique. How do we get on that subject? This is terrific. I am so thrilled we had a chance because I've got your phone numbers, many of them up here. I've been working this file with you guys. I said I got to get Warren
Right.
Semmel up here sometime. And if we haven't given this, be sure you.
Yep, we have it.
Yep.
Yep,
This
thank you.
is cool what Warren did. And it's the kind of thing maybe your newspaper you want to take if you want to take an extra to give to your editor down there.
Oh, definitely.
Saying because our local they own this Jamestown Post Journal, which is ours. And they have the same owners. But when they saw what was done just over the border in Warren, now they're interested in doing it here, and they want to use our interviews because some of these guys have actually either died or gone downhill. So you couldn't do what we've just done the last year. They say, all right, here it is. Rather than you interview them, you can just look at this.
All right.
So, and it's important, obviously. Now's the time. Hopefully you can get your mother's story.
Pardon?
Was you?
Dad.
My dad.
He was in Europe. Yeah.
Okay, and you still alive?
Yes,
Oh,
he's
well then-
90. We just had a 90th birthday celebration.
Well, get somebody down there to do this.
But nobody could ever get him to talk about it, just like Warren's
Hey,
dad.
this guy will get him to talk.
And he
Get him over here.
did
It'd be
end
nice
up,
if you could get him over here, could you?
I can bring them.
Well, I'm serious about this. You have my number, but because that's what happens. All of a sudden,
Yep.
hey, let me show you the Jackson Center. And you get around and he sees his contemporaries, and next thing you know, he starts talking. Next thing you know, you say, come on, let Greg, kind of get a few thoughts on it.
Yeah, he have we know about the Queen Mary, how you got over there, and the kidney soup.
Kidney stew.
Kidney stew in the soup, which was like served every other meal.
He recalls driving through London as it was being bombed. He was
Okay.
driving his commander,
Wow.
and they were trying to duck
In charge of the,
buildings that were falling as he was driving through the street.
he was a motorcade.
That stuff has got to...
Well, it'd be really wonderful if we could get them over here. That'd be great for us.
Yeah, it gets... Then obviously the family gets a copy of this, so it's a way to preserve it.
Oh,
and that's what we really do it
Yeah,
for.
we do.
We really don't. I mean, we think there's a whole story to be told by these guys,
Oh.
and there is. I mean, you start
Yeah.
piecing it together and some of the experiences, and everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
Everybody has a story. They don't think so. And what I find interesting is your dad may have felt like this. If you're not on the front line, you got bullets going by you, and you're not the same soldier in the same army as somebody who's behind being the support.
Right,
And that's a thing. That's a mindset.
absolutely.
And to me, that's totally wrong.
Yeah,
Because if you don't have that infrastructure, you never do any of that. And it takes a while to convince folks to say you're just as important in the MASH unit or
That's
the food
true.
unit, or because you do all that, and then they, yeah, you're
Yeah.
probably right.
that's true, and
Huh? Yeah.
and what they witness afterwards, though, is what really causes the damage of many of them. Yeah.
I'm gonna get a story on this thing.
Okay, go
Because
ahead.
when I was telling you about the Defenders of Freedom we did, this thing is different. This is what they did in Warren. One of the guys here, we interviewed here for our archives. I brought him up here. He'd asked me a million times if I ever knew what happened to Ed Higgins. Never heard of the guy, okay? Never heard of him. From Clarendon, small town, 500 people, okay? Him and this Ed Higgins went in the war together. Now, a couple months ago at Jamestown, when they renamed the Jamestown Chautauqua County Airport to include the Robert Jackson Field, I introduced this gentleman to a World War II veteran from Jamestown, and he's also, we taped him here. Got to talking back and forth. He said, I was in the Army with two guys from Pennsylvania. I said, thousands of guys from Pennsylvania. He said, no, they were from just outside of Warren. Now, the guy here, his name is Rex, he's asked me 100 times if I knew what happened to Ed Higgins. Don't know. He said, nobody knows what happened to him, but we went in the war together. Tony, from Jamestown, New York now, 20 miles away, said, I was in the Army with a couple guys from Pennsylvania. One of the guys was Ed Higgins. He said, I was with him in Africa when he got killed. He said, we were being straight. We fell down in the sand. He was right beside me. He got hit, and I didn't. And Rex, the guy from Warren, my buddy from Warren, says, are you kidding me? 70 years it took him to find out what happened to Ed Higgins.
Oh,
So
gee.
that's one of the better stories you'll have on that camera.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh,
So I stopped to see Tony today, and he gives me a book that a woman gave him from Jamestown from 1900 to 1925 of Jamestown. I gave it to Jen, but I want you to see it. Fantastic pictures of Jamestown. Tony gave it to me to give to the Jackson Center. So I brought it up today and gave it.
So put in for mileage.
Oh, I came up to hear this guy and meet his wife. Mileage is nothing.
Well, this has been great. It's terrific. Thank you. And I mean that seriously. You get your father up here, and maybe some. Well, any day is fine. I'm an attorney by trade, but I'm on notice, short leash with Steve. But if a weekend, some Saturday morning, he came up. We normally do the veterans in another location.
the green wall.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason is, sometimes we'll go off.